What if everything you were taught about money was technically correct, but was quietly destroying your life anyway? What if the spreadsheet balanced perfectly, the investment accounts were growing exactly as projected, every financial decision you made passed the logic test, and you were still lying awake at 2 in the morning, heart racing, jaw tight, running survival calculations in the dark like a man preparing for a disaster that had not happened yet? Here is a question that the personal finance industry almost never asks because it does not fit neatly into a calculator. What is financial anxiety actually costing you? Not in theory. Not in some abstract, soft, motivational poster kind of way, but in real, measurable, daily costs. The meetings you stay quiet in, the career risks you never take, the version of yourself that slowly disappears because you are too busy protecting what you have, built to actually live inside it. Because here is what nobody tells you when you are diligently following all the rules: maximizing contributions, leveraging low-interest debt, optimizing every dollar for maximum long-term return. Nobody tells you that you can execute a perfectly rational financial strategy and still feel completely, utterly trapped. Daniel Mercer was 47 years old. He earned over $180,000 a year. He lived in a beautiful home in a quiet suburb outside Denver. He had a strong marriage, a career he had built from nothing, investment accounts growing steadily, and a financial plan that any advisor would look at and call impressive. By every metric that exists in personal finance, Daniel was winning, and every single night, he looked like a man who was losing everything. This is the story of the worst financial decision Daniel ever made. The one that cost him real, documented, calculable money. The one his financial advisor called suboptimal. The one his colleagues debated over lunch like he had lost his mind. And the one that gave him back his life. Stay with me. Because by the time this is over, I think you are going to look at your own financial strategy very differently. If you are new here, welcome to Nora Money Mind. This channel exists because personal finance is not just about numbers. It never was. It is about psychology, behavior, fear, identity, and the deeply human ways that money shapes how we think, how we move through the world, and who we become over time. If that is the kind of financial conversation you have been looking for, subscribe right now, because we do this every single week, and today's video is one of the most important ones we have done. Now, let us go deeper into Daniel's story, because what happened to him is not unusual, it is not extreme, and it is far more common than most people will ever admit out loud. This is not a story about mortgages, even though a mortgage is at the center of it. It is not about interest rates or opportunity cost, or whether paying off debt early is mathematically superior to investing the difference. All of those things matter, and we will address all of them honestly. But the real story here, the one underneath the financial mechanics, is about something much harder to quantify. It is about the invisible emotional price that accumulates when a person carries financial pressure for too long. It is about what happens to your decision-making, your risk tolerance, your professional courage, and your fundamental sense of freedom when a fixed financial obligation stops being just a line item on a budget and starts becoming the invisible architecture of your entire life. And it is about the moment Daniel finally asked himself the question he had been avoiding for years. Not, am I maximizing my returns? But, is any of this actually making my life better? That question, when he finally let himself sit with it honestly, changed everything. To understand what happened to Daniel, you need to understand where he came from. He was not born into financial stability. His parents were working class. His father worked in logistics. His mother worked part retail. And money in his childhood home was always something that ran out before the month did. There was no inheritance waiting for him. No safety net. No family wealth to fall back on. Everything Daniel had, he had built himself. From the ground up, through discipline and sacrifice and years of relentless, methodical effort, he put himself through college. Graduated without connections, but with an ironclad work ethic that got him hired, then promoted again, until he landed the senior project management role at a mid-sized tech firm that would become his professional home for over a decade. He and Emily had been together since their late 20s. They had built their life together the same way Daniel approached everything, deliberately, carefully, with a long-term plan always visible on the horizon. He maxed out his 401(k) every single year without exception. He invested aggressively in index funds and never panicked during downturns. He tracked his net worth on a spreadsheet every single month, updating every account balance with the precision of someone who understood that small gains compound into large ones over time. He listened to financial podcasts during his morning commute. He read books about wealth building, behavioral finance, and retirement optimization. He knew the difference between a Roth conversion and a backdoor contribution. He understood expense ratios and asset allocation and rebalancing strategies. This was not a man making financial mistakes. This was a man doing everything right. But here is what the spreadsheet could not show. Daniel checked the market futures every night before going to sleep, not as a casual habit, as a compulsion, a ritual of reassurance that rarely actually reassured him. He would look at the numbers, feel briefly okay, and then his mind would find another thread to pull. He woke up most mornings thinking about layoffs before he had even gotten out of bed. He thought about recessions during dinner. He found himself, in quiet moments, waiting for a meeting to start, sitting in traffic, lying in bed next to Emily at midnight while she slept, running mental calculations about cash flow and worst-case scenarios and how many months they could survive on savings if everything went wrong. And Emily had noticed something happening to Daniel that she could not quite name for a long time. Something she had observed slowly and gradually over several years, the way you notice a season changing, not in one dramatic moment, but in the accumulation of small, subtle shifts that you only recognize in hindsight. Daniel had stopped being fully present. He was there physically. He showed up. He participated. But there was always a part of him that was somewhere else entirely, running the numbers, calculating the managing the anxiety that never fully went away, no matter how well the portfolio performed. He had, without realizing it, built a life that looked exactly like success from the outside, while feeling, from the inside, like permanent precariousness. And the secret he had never said aloud to anyone, not to Emily, not to friends, not to himself in any honest, direct way, was this. Deep down, beneath all the disciplined investing and the optimized accounts and the carefully maintained spreadsheets, Daniel believed that one truly bad year could destroy everything they had built. Not set them back, not cost them progress, destroy it. That belief lived in him like a low-grade fever that never broke. It was always there, and he had lived with it for so long that he had stopped experiencing it as fear. He had started experiencing it as just who he was, careful, vigilant, responsible. He had no idea those were just other words for exhausted. Around this time, Daniel went deeper into what I can only call optimization culture. And if you have spent any meaningful time in personal finance content online, you know exactly what that world looks like. It is the constant, relentless messaging that leverage is always your friend, that paying off a low-interest mortgage early is financially illiterate, that every dollar not deployed in service of maximum long-term return is a dollar wasted. That present discomfort is simply the price of future wealth, and if you are not willing to pay that price indefinitely, you lack the discipline to be truly financially successful. There is real wisdom buried inside some of that. There genuinely is. The math behind compound interest is not wrong. The argument for investing over paying off low-interest debt is not wrong, purely as a mathematical exercise. But Daniel did not encounter it as wisdom. He encountered it as identity. He stopped taking vacations, not because they were genuinely unaffordable, but because every time he started to feel excited about booking one, the back of his brain would pull up a calculation. What? Would this money be worth in 25 years if invested at 7% annually? And that number, compared to a week on a beach, made the vacation feel irresponsible. He delayed home repairs. He said no to experiences. He declined invitations. And Emily, who had been patient and understanding for years because she loved Daniel and trusted that this was all building toward something, finally said something to him one evening that landed differently than she had probably intended. She said that their entire life had started to feel like one giant spreadsheet. Daniel heard it. He acknowledged it. He told her it was temporary, that the discipline was building something real and lasting, that they were ahead of almost everyone they knew, that future them would be grateful for every sacrifice. Present them made today, and he meant it. He genuinely believed it. But then, a few weeks later, something happened that the optimization frameworks had no answer for. He and Emily had a rare, quiet evening. No obligations, no plans, just the two of them at home. And at some point, Daniel realized, sitting in his own living room, that he could not remember the last time he had felt genuinely, uncalculatedly relaxed. Not relieved that the numbers were okay. Not reassured that the plan was on track. Actually relaxed. Present. At ease in his own life. He tried to think back. He could not find it. He was doing everything right. The numbers confirmed it. So why did everything feel so wrong? Then, an event at work cracked the foundation of everything Daniel thought he understood about financial security. A colleague named Kevin was laid off. Now, on its own, this is not an unusual event. Layoffs happen. But what made Kevin's situation so destabilizing for Daniel was not the layoff itself. It was who Kevin was. Kevin was not struggling. Kevin was not underprepared. Kevin had a good salary, solid savings, owned his home outright and had for years, and had, by any observable measure, built himself a position of financial stability that should have felt secure. Kevin looked safe. And then one Tuesday morning, he was called into a conference room and walked out 45 minutes later carrying his belongings. Daniel watched it happen from across the open floor plan and felt something cold pass through him that he could not immediately name. He named it later that night. It was the realization that safety, as he had been building it, was an illusion, that no level of diligent saving and disciplined investing and careful optimization could fully protect against the simple, brutal reality that income could disappear, quickly, without warning, without regard for how well you had managed your money up to that point. And when income disappeared, the mortgage, that perfectly structured, low-interest rate, financially sensible mortgage, would still be there, on time, every month, completely indifferent to what had happened to the person responsible for paying it. Daniel began running calculations he had never run before, not wealth-building calculations, survival calculations. How long could they last on savings alone? What was the absolute monthly minimum they needed? What would they have to cut first, second, third? And the more he ran those numbers, the more the mortgage transformed in his mind from a financial instrument into something else entirely. It became the fixed point around which every fear was anchored. And here is the part of this story that I want you to sit with, because it is the most important thing Daniel understood during this period, and it is something that almost no financial content ever talks about honestly. Debt changes behavior. Not just financial behavior, all behavior. Daniel started going quiet in meetings where he used to be vocal. He stopped raising concerns that needed to be raised. He stopped pushing back on decisions he disagreed with. He stopped advocating for projects he genuinely believed in. He became, professionally, smaller than he had ever been. Not because he had lost confidence in his abilities, but because the background calculation running constantly in his mind was always the same. I cannot afford to lose this job. I cannot afford to rock the boat. I cannot afford to be the person who makes anyone in this building uncomfortable. And the consulting business, the idea he had been quietly building in the back of his mind for years, the thing he genuinely believed he had the skills and the network and the vision to build, he stopped mentioning it. even to himself. Because the thought of trading a stable salary for variable income while that mortgage payment sat waiting every month made his chest tighten in a way that was indistinguishable from fear. He was not broke. He was not even close to broke. By almost any objective measure, Daniel Mercer was financially successful, but he was trapped, and the trap was not made of numbers. It was made of the psychological weight of knowing that one bad month, one wrong move, one event he could not control, could threaten the entire structure he had spent his adult life constructing. The mortgage had stopped being a financial tool. It had become a leash, and Daniel had been wearing it so long he had forgotten what it felt like to walk without it. I want to stop here for just a moment, because what I am describing is not rare. It is not extreme. And the fact that it is not talked about openly in personal finance spaces is, honestly, one of the great failures of the financial content industry. If any part of Daniel's story is resonating with you right now, the background anxiety that never fully goes away, the feeling of being trapped even though the numbers look fine, the sense that you are optimizing your financial life while something quieter and harder to measure is being slowly consumed. I want you to drop a comment below. You do not have to say anything elaborate. Just say, "I felt this," because you are not alone, and sometimes just knowing that matters more than any financial strategy. Now, back to Daniel. About 8 months after Kevin's layoff, Daniel ran into an old friend named Marcus at a gathering they both happened to attend. Daniel had not seen Marcus in several years. He knew vaguely that Marcus had taken a very different professional path, had never pursued the corporate trajectory Daniel had, earned considerably less, lived in a smaller and less impressive home. Daniel's honest assumption, walking into that evening, was that Marcus was probably carrying some financial stress. He mentally prepared himself to be careful with what he said, not wanting the gap in their circumstances to create awkwardness. What he encountered instead stopped him completely. Marcus was calm. Not the performed calm of someone pretending to be fine. Not the brittle cheerfulness of someone managing anxiety behind a pleasant expression. Actually, genuinely, organically calm. He was fully present in every conversation. He listened without distraction. He laughed easily and without effort. His entire body had the relaxed posture of someone who was not, at any level, braced for impact. He looked, Daniel thought, and this is the word Daniel used when he described this moment later, he looked free. At some point in the evening, the conversation drifted to houses and real estate, the way it does, and Marcus mentioned almost in passing that he had paid off his home years ago, that the people around him at the time had considered it financially naive, that the argument against it, mathematically, was not wrong. Daniel's instinct was immediate and trained. He started walking through the counterargument, the interest rate differential, the historical investment returns, the opportunity cost of diverting capital toward debt repayment instead of equity accumulation. Marcus listened to all of it without interrupting. He did not argue. He did not defend himself. He did not pull out a counterargument. He just looked at Daniel quietly and said 2 words, "Maybe, but I sleep." And then the conversation moved on. But Daniel sat with those 2 words for the rest of the evening. He kept looking across the room at Marcus, at the ease in his posture, at the unforced quality of his engagement with everyone around him, and felt something he had not expected, not pity, not superiority, not the quiet satisfaction of knowing his own net worth was almost certainly higher. Envy. Pure, clear, uncomplicated envy of something Marcus had that Daniel did not, something that had nothing to do with income or assets or any number on any spreadsheet. Marcus had peace, and Daniel could not remember the last time he had felt anything that resembled it. What was money actually supposed to do for people? Daniel drove home that night with that question sitting in the passenger seat beside him. 3 months after that conversation, Daniel's company announced restructuring rumors. No official communication, no specifics, just the particular quality of silence that settles over an organization when something is coming. The slightly too brief meetings, the closed doors that used to stay open, the way certain conversations stopped happening in common spaces. Daniel did not sleep properly for nearly 2 weeks. He would lie awake in the dark, running through scenarios in a loop that his mind refused to interrupt. Layoff, extended job search, depleted savings. The mortgage payment arriving on the first of the month, perfectly indifferent to whatever had happened to the person responsible for paying it. Each scenario branched into more scenarios. Each worst case had a worse case beneath it. And the spreadsheet that had been his trusted map for years had no column for what he was experiencing, no row for the cost of 2 weeks without real sleep, no formula for calculating what chronic financial anxiety does to a person over the course of a decade. The spreadsheet measured returns. It had never once measured fear. One night, very late, Daniel found himself sitting in the dark of his living room with no lights on and no phone in his hand. Just sitting in the silence, completely still, in a way that was not peaceful. It was the stillness of someone who has run out of the energy required to keep moving. Emily found him there. She had gotten up and seen him sitting alone in the dark, and she sat down beside him without turning on a light. She did not ask what was wrong. She did not offer solutions. She had learned over 19 years when Daniel needed answers and when he needed something else. She just sat beside him and waited. After a long silence, and Daniel said later that it felt like a very long time, he said something he had never said out loud before. "I don't even know what all of this is for anymore, not dramatically, not as a breakdown." In the quiet, exhausted, stripped-down voice of a man who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and has simply, finally, run out of the strength to pretend it isn't heavy. Emily put her hand on his arm, and in that moment something shifted in Daniel, not a decision yet, but a recognition. A clarity he had been avoiding for years because the spreadsheet had been so convincing and the optimization frameworks had been so compelling and the logic had always checked out. The strategy had been designed to maximize efficiency. It had never been designed to reduce fragility. And Daniel, despite the impressive accounts and the disciplined contributions and the carefully rebalanced portfolio, was fragile in a way that none of it had fixed. He had been solving the wrong problem for years. 2 months later, Daniel made the decision. He liquidated a significant portion of his taxable investment account. He transferred the funds. And on a Tuesday afternoon, he watched the mortgage balance update to 0. He sat at his desk afterward and did not move for several minutes. His financial advisor called it suboptimal and asked if he wanted to talk through the math again. He declined. Online calculators, which he ran himself, confirmed that he had sacrificed a substantial amount in projected future gains. A real number, not a trivial one, and he looked at it clearly and did not flinch from it. Friends who had followed the same financial philosophy he had lived by for years told him he had made a mistake. One sent him a detailed breakdown of exactly how much he had left on the table over a 30-year horizon. Another said it was the kind of move that felt good emotionally but would cost him significantly in retirement. Daniel thanked them. He read their numbers. He did not change his mind. Because the moment that mortgage balance hit 0, something happened in his body that no calculator had ever predicted, and no financial framework had ever accounted for. He exhaled. Not a dramatic exhale, not a movie moment, just a long, slow, quiet release, like a pressure valve that had been stuck closed for years and had finally silently given way. And with that breath went something he had been carrying. For so long he had stopped recognizing it as a weight. The hum of dread was gone. That constant, low-frequency anxiety that had become the background noise of his entire adult professional life, the thing he had mistaken for diligence, for responsibility, for just being a serious person who took his finances seriously. It was gone, and in its absence, the silence was extraordinary. The changes that followed were not the kind that make for dramatic stories. There was no celebration, no sudden transformation, no moment of cinematic clarity. The changes were quiet, almost mundane, and more profound than anything Daniel had experienced in years. He started sleeping through the night, consistently, reliably, night after night. He would close his eyes and open them when the alarm went off, and the hours in between were genuinely, peacefully blank. Not interrupted by calculations, not hijacked by worst-case scenarios. After years of 2 a.m. arithmetic in the dark, this felt like something being returned to him that he had not known was missing. He became present again, at dinner, in conversations, in his own life. He stopped scanning every economic headline for personal threat, stopped running survival calculations in the background of every waking hour, started listening to people when they talked to him, actually listening, not listening while simultaneously calculating, and noticed, with some private embarrassment, how long it had been since he had done that. Emily noticed the change within weeks, not in a single dramatic conversation. In the accumulation of small moments, the ease returning to his voice, the unhurried quality returning to evenings at home, something in his face softening in a way she had quietly missed for years. And then the professional transformation, which was the one that surprised Daniel most. The consulting business, the idea that had been gathering dust for years because variable income felt impossible while the mortgage sat waiting. He started actually building it, carefully and thoughtfully and without recklessness, but with a genuine openness and appetite for risk that he had not had in years, because the floor of his financial life no longer felt like it could collapse beneath him at a moment's notice. He spoke up in meetings. He raised concerns that needed to be raised. He had professional disagreements with people who had authority over him and did not lie awake afterward calculating what it would cost him. He started making decisions based on what he believed was right, instead of what felt safest given his fixed monthly obligations. He was staying in his job by choice rather than by fear. And the difference between those two things, which sounds subtle, was everything. His net worth was lower, technically. The spreadsheet said so. He knew it. He had made peace with it. But for the first time in longer than he could clearly remember, he was not trapped. And one evening, months after the decision, he said something to Emily that became, for both of them, the sentence that summarized everything he had learned. A mathematically optimized life can still feel emotionally bankrupt. He said it plainly, without bitterness or drama. Just as a true thing, learned at real cost, that he wished someone had told him before he had spent a decade finding it out for himself. Before we close, I want to be direct about something because this story could be misread and I do not want it to be. This is not an argument that paying off your mortgage early is always the right decision. It is not. For many people, in many situations, the math genuinely does favor investing the difference, and the math is not irrelevant. Numbers matter. Returns matter. Long-term compounding matters enormously, as anyone who has studied wealth building seriously already knows. This is not a case against financial optimization or investing, or the disciplined, patient, long-term approach to building wealth that actually works. What this story is, the only thing it is a reminder of something the financial industry is structurally incapable of measuring, and therefore almost never talks about. Human beings do not experience money mathematically. We experience it emotionally. We carry it in our nervous systems. We feel it in the quality of our sleep and the ease of our laughter and the willingness we have, or do not have, to take the risks that actually move our lives forward. We feel it in the version of ourselves we show up as every single day, in every room we walk into, in every decision we make. And the financial cost of chronic anxiety, the career risks never taken, the professional voice gone quiet, the decade of being smaller than you are capable of being, because the fear of losing what you have built is louder than the possibility of what you could build. That cost does not appear on any spreadsheet. It has no column. It is never added to the calculation. But it is real. And for some people, it is the largest cost they will ever pay. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the highest return that money can generate is not a percentage point. It is peace. It is the ability to sleep without arithmetic, to take a risk without catastrophizing, to be present in your own life instead of perpetually managing your exposure to it, to make decisions from a place of genuine freedom instead of the quiet, invisible, surprisingly powerful coercion of financial fear. The spreadsheet Daniel had trusted for years was not wrong, but it had been answering the wrong question. It had been telling him how to maximize the number, and the number had been going up, while the thing the number was supposed to serve had been quietly, steadily deteriorating. The question that actually mattered, the one that the spreadsheet had no formula for, was this: is this strategy helping you live your life, or is it slowly, imperceptibly consuming it? Money is a tool, one of the most powerful tools available to a human being in the modern world. It can buy independence, it can buy options. It can buy time and freedom and the ability to take risks that would otherwise feel impossible. But a tool that controls its user has stopped being a tool. And the only question worth asking about any financial decision, any of them at any income level at any stage of life, is this: is this money working for me, or am I working for it? I want to end with a question for you, and I genuinely mean this. I am not asking for engagement metrics. I am asking because the answer matters. Has there ever been a financial decision you made that the numbers said was wrong, but that gave you something the numbers could never measure? Or the reverse. Have you ever made a perfectly rational financial decision that cost you something the spreadsheet never accounted for? Drop your answer in the comments. These conversations have a way of reaching exactly the people who need to read them most. And if this video made you think differently about the psychology of money, about what financial freedom actually means at a human level, beyond the accounts and the returns and the optimization strategies, then subscribe to Nora Money Mind. This is what we do here every single week. We go deeper than the numbers. We talk about the real, lived, often uncomfortable human experience of navigating money in a world that mostly just talks about math. Because here is the thing about Daniel's story that stays with me most. He was not unusual. He was not extreme. He was not making obvious mistakes. He was doing everything right. And he was still trapped. And the most unsettling part of everything he learned, the detail that I think deserves to be the last thing you carry out of this video, is this. Most financially trapped people do not look trapped at all. They look successful. They look disciplined. They look like they have it figured out, and that is exactly why nobody talks about it, until now. We will see you in the next one.